Hello and welcome back to ENG Engine. The topic in this video is types of clauses. Before that, you have a small test at the end, so observe the video carefully. Kindly subscribe the channel and share the video to those whom you find it useful. Before we learn the types of clauses, just have a look at these two sentences. Sentences have structures like a few sentences can be split and a few sentences cannot be split. If you look at the first sentence, we can split it. He is confident that he will win. He is confident that he is confident. Here we can split the sentence. He is confident that he will win. So we can split it into two parts. This first part, he is confident, this gives us a complete sense by itself. And this part, that he will win, is incomplete. It gives a partial meaning, it is incomplete, but it has a subject and it has a verb. But if this part depends on this part to give a complete meaning, then the sentence is a complete sentence. The second sentence, if you work hard, you will succeed. The first part is incomplete. If you work hard, this also we can split into two. If you work hard, this is the first part. You will succeed, this is the second part. In this one, you will succeed. This part gives a complete meaning by itself. And this part depends on this, you will succeed, to give a complete meaning. So this is how the sentence structure is. Now, let us learn what the clauses are. Clauses are of two types. One is the main clause and the other one is the subordinate clause. Main clause is that part of the sentence which gives meaning by itself. The part of the sentence which gives a complete meaning by itself is called the main clause. Subordinate clause is that part of the sentence which depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning. That is, the subordinate clause depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning. Now, since this main clause gives a complete meaning by itself, it is otherwise called the independent clause. Main clause gives a complete meaning by itself, and so it is called independent clause. The subordinate clause depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning, and so the subordinate clause is otherwise called the dependent clause. Now we will understand this clearly if we see the examples. The first sentence, I found the book which you had lost. In this sentence, I found the book. This part gives a complete meaning. Which you had lost, it's a partial meaning. But if this part depends on this, it gives a complete meaning. So the part which gives a complete meaning by itself is called the main clause. Main clause can be represented as MC. And the part which depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning is called the subordinate clause. Subordinate clause can be mentioned as SC. The next example, I visited my aunt who lives in the village. I visited my aunt. We can split the sentence here. This gives a complete meaning. Who lives in the village gives a partial meaning. So this part which gives the complete meaning is called the main clause. And the part which depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning is called the subordinate clause. There are a few more examples. The ship will leave once the captain arrives. The ship will leave. Here, this part gives a complete meaning and the second part gives a partial meaning. It depends on the main clause. So this part is the main clause and the part which depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning is called the subordinate clause. She bought the medicines prescribed by the doctor. So she bought the medicines as the main clause. It gives us complete meaning by itself. It is otherwise called as independent clause. Prescribed by the doctor, it gives a partial meaning. It has a verb, and so this is called the subordinate clause. We have a few more examples. He hopes that he can go abroad. He can go abroad gives a complete meaning. So this is the main clause. He hopes that. It is not complete. So this is the subordinate clause. Sometimes the subordinate clause comes before the main clause and sometimes it is placed after the main clause. The next sentence, if you eat healthy food, you will get well soon. You will get well soon gives the complete meaning and so this is the main clause. If you eat healthy food, then it is incomplete. So this depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning and hence this is the subordinate clause. The next example, though he is lean, he is strong. Though he is lean, it is incomplete. So this part is the subordinate clause. He is strong. This gives the complete meaning by itself. So this is the independent clause or the main clause. Now the next sentence. That building which is made of stone is a museum. Can you guess what the main clause is and what the subordinate clause is? Do you think that building which is made of is main clause? No. That building which? No. So this sentence is a bit tricky sentence. That building is a museum. This is the underlined part is the main clause. Which is made of stone. This is the subordinate clause. So the subordinate clause may come before the main clause or after the main clause or it may come in between the main clause also. Now it's time for the test. We have just 2 questions, just try. Identify the main clause and the subordinate clause. The milkman will come when the sun rises. Once we finished, we submitted the papers. Shall we discuss the answers? The milkman will come when the sun rises. So the milkman will come is the part which gives the complete meaning by itself. So this is the main clause. When the sun rises depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning. So this is the dependent clause or the subordinate clause. Once we finished, we submitted the papers. Here once we finished, we can split the sentence like this. We submitted the papers gives a complete meaning by itself. So this is called the main clause or the independent clause. Once we finished is incomplete. This depends on the main clause to give us complete meaning. So this is called the subordinate clause or the dependent clause. Well, to sum up, we learnt what clauses are and we also learnt what the 2 types of clauses are, that is the main clause and the subordinate clause. Next we shall learn more about sentences in the next video. Kindly give a thumbs up and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.